What's up? This is MC Lars. You are listening to Journey into Comics. You!
And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Journey into Comics, a podcast about comic books, video games, movies, television, and everything nerd with your hosts, Nate Phillips and Brandon Stone.
You're gonna see some serious shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 101 of Journey into Comics. I'm your host, Nate. Today joining me, as always, Brando. Welcome.
How's it going, bud?
Oh, it's going very loudly. That was awesome. How are you doing, man?
Oh, it's good to be here today.
Well, that's good. How was your weekend?
Short. I had to work, and I was pretty much a potato yesterday.
You are potato?
I was potato for most of the day, yes. But I was sort of taking it easy as well because I sort of took a spill a few days ago.
Really?
Yeah. Turns out baby appliances or baby things can be quite dangerous. And
not to babies.
No, apparently not to babies, but apparently to their parents, because Wyatt now likes to throw his toys over the baby gate leading into the front room. And I saw his little crinkly book he likes to chew on over the baby gate, so I leaned over to pick it up, but my foot, I had one foot off the ground and one hand holding onto the door frame, and the one foot on the ground was on the plastic of his like little Star Trek arch thing. You know what I'm talking about?
I do know.
So that foot slipped. I went down onto the baby gate and busted my big vein in my wrist, my right wrist.
Damn.
It was pretty bruised. I mean, you know, it doesn't really hurt to do much, but ironically, sitting here like trying to like scroll through comics and stuff on the computer, it actually hurt.
You're like, ow, damn it. Well,
oh yeah, it's a little stingy.
Well, Brando, shockingly today, we brought a guest.
We did.
He is not, I don't know how you'd say this, he's not a first-time guest, but he is.
He's a first-time invited guest, as far as, like, officially. I mean, he was part of a quite special arrangement.
Yeah,
to be on the show the first time.
We're going to be, like, diving deep into that in a minute, but I want to welcome to Journey into Comics officially, Todd Black. Welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard about, bruised wrist, and I just dozed off there for a second. I'm sorry.
That's all right. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. I actually had the day off today, which really worked well. And then, of course, E3 was started today, so I was, getting all the gaming news.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're telling me. I've been taking notes for the past 2 days. We'll be doing a podcast on that sometime this week.
Awesome. The Game Addicts podcast review of E3.
Review/discussion. So here's the deal. So the way I'm kind of thinking is that, like last year, it will be on the main channel, but it will be under the Game Addicts flag. So it will be both JIC 102 and Game Addicts 4. So it's sort of a weird comic-like crossover type thing going on there. I'm hoping to have Wes on, but if that's not guaranteed at this point, and I'm hoping to not go as long as last year.
Near 3 hours.
It was 2 hours, 40-something minutes, 48, something like that. It's our longest podcast we've ever had.
I've done that before. Just gone on, long podcasts about E3. So if you need an extra voice, I'm there.
Well, I mean, definitely might be talking to you about that. Wes is very last minute.
Well, he knows Wes. He knows how Wes rolls.
Yeah.
We were introduced to Todd through Wes, so that works out swimmingly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's real quick unpack this, guys, and it's cool because we get to have somebody who got to experience it, not where we experienced it. But I want to kind of unpack Villains Con real quick, discuss how we thought about what we thought about the weekends. A lot of us, Todd had a booth at Villains Con, so hopefully that went well. That's good. That's good. You sold a lot of the stock from Guardians and Home 1 and 2.
Actually, in a kind of a surprise role reversal, I sold more of Home than I did of Guardians, and obviously, we'll tell the viewers what those are in a second. But for me, this was actually kind of fun because Guardians has been my bread and butter for the last few years, and Home has come out basically within like the last 6 or 7 months, and so for people to respond to that so well and just buy up 1 and 2, it was actually really, really fun. And then I had one of the guys from Villains Con actually buy the entire series of Guardians, which was that was fun. So, but yeah, I was actually very content with how much I sold at Villains Con.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of those cons that you got there, and as far as I was concerned, it was like this could be really great, and there could be a lot of people, or there's not going to be quite a turnout that everybody was expecting. And it kind of was middle of the road. It just depended on the day. I know Friday was much slower, and there really wasn't a ton going on. I think, Todd, you did a comics panel, though, right, on Friday?
I did. I was there with my friend Brian Morris and a guy who I can't recall his name. I think it was Charles. And we just yucked it up and talked comics for an hour. That was great. That was actually my first official panel. So to do it with Brian and Charles, that was actually really, really fun, and I'm glad we got to do it.
Hell yeah. And then Brandon, on the flip side, before we get into episode 100, you got to do something that I thought was quite phenomenal, and I have literally in my head, it's probably the biggest regret from the weekend, but you hosted the Star Trek panel, and I so could have got the audio. It would have been cakewalk, and I didn't.
Well, I mean, it was quite the blast. I mean, it was also challenging as well to try and steer these guys, and of course, I mean, I know my Trek, but the one series, there's like the 2 of them I really haven't dived into because I've tried watching them, but I haven't been able to sink into them. Was Deep Space Nine and Voyager, but the 2 actors were from Deep Space Nine, and then Philo was thrown in the last 5 minutes. So imagine me now trying to get 2 actors, and now I got to find some way to curl Philo, who is an effects animation assistant on the very first motion picture for Star Trek. I got to try and find some way to get these guys to sort of like to kind of shoehorn him in and like keep him into the conversation without excluding. It was a 5-minute cluster F in my head. But also, Nate, I saw you sitting down during the Power Ranger panel.
Yeah.
And so wished I would have thought to sit down. There weren't any chairs up there, but I saw a little bit of video, and this may have been posted on our stuff or whatever. It's video that you took of me.
Yeah.
And I guess I was more nervous than I thought I was because I was over accentuating my nods. Like I looked like I was slowly headbanging.
That's awesome.
Well, like I was trying to, make sure that the celebrities saw me like my reaction, but I was also making sure that everybody in the audience saw me. And I feel like if I was sitting down, I would have been much more subdued and more relaxed. But like I didn't feel nervous after we started, but I guess I still was. I don't know, but I feel like it went well.
I thought it came off very nice with you guys. There was a lot of playful banter with Chase and Aaron. And I thought you guys did a really good job. I mean, like you said, you had to shoehorn Philo in there. And for shoehorning him in there 5 minutes in, like I said, I wish I would have the audio because it doesn't sound like it. It sounds very, very well done. Like you guys took a lot of time and really, really thought about what you were doing. And
guess what? We did not.
Yeah, I mean, I was just listening to it from my booth because, you could hear everything in the room, which is actually one of the perks if you really think about it. And I was just like listening to this, and like trying to keep eye contact with the customers that are coming by. But I was listening to the stories, and it was very enjoyable, and so I thought it was really well done.
One of the cool things with Philo coming in is that the guest stars that were on that from Deep Space Nine, Aaron and I'm trying to remember her name. Was it Chase?
Chase Masterson, yeah.
Chase. They both really didn't know Philo. And so hearing them or watching them react to his stories about working on the original motion picture, they got into it, and they were everything that he said they were hearing for the first time as well. So they actively engaged him and even asked him questions that I was going to ask him for me, and really made this. It was weird because I felt like there was like a 10-minute segment where I didn't say a damn thing.
But that's okay because they were doing all the work for you.
Yeah.
I know, but see, as you do an interview, as you sort of lay back talking to people, you sort of think and where you're going to go next based on what they say. What are you going to do here? What are you going to do there? And I'm trying not to be rude and interrupt these guys. And then they start like asking the questions, and I'm asking the questions. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to stay engaged and trying to think about what I'm going to say next, and they keep saying it for me. But it was a freaking blast. I would love to do it again sometime. Nate, and you hosted the Power Ranger panel. How did that go for you?
Okay, so let's talk about this. So
Uh-oh.
I had walked up and introduced myself on Friday to Carla and Kerrigan, and then on Saturday before the panel, I introduced myself to Robert. It always seemed like every time I walked up to his table, he had people, or he didn't look like he wanted to engage in people. And finally on Saturday, I just walked up and was like, "Hey man, how's it going?" And he was very pleasant. Everyone was like, "Oh, Robert, he talks kind of slow. He isn't really quick to respond." And maybe that was just misinformation from not reading him as a person, but I found him very easily approachable. And then once I knew that, and I kind of already knew some stuff about Robert, aside from just the fact that he had played the voice of Lord Zed, I had done research and knew that he was a part of like Digimon, which is another beautiful tie-in to Todd there. And
I didn't know that. I mean, I went up to him. Like, I'm sorry, I went to him after I did helped him with a panel of voice acting, and then I looked at his picture and I'm like, and he's like, wait a minute, and he goes, yeah, I was the voice of Armadillomon. I'm like, oh my gosh, because and I start playing, in my head, Armadillomon, Armadigivolve 2, and I'm just like, how is that Lord Zed?
oh, it's
But it was
so
beautiful.
great. It's so great, yeah.
It was great. So great.
So
Sorry, you may continue.
No, it's fine. So we go to get on stage, and I knew that Jesse was a little bit nervous because he hadn't really interacted with these people, and he really loves the Power Rangers. I mean, I really love the Power Rangers, but this guy takes it to the next level. He knows knowledge that I was clueless on. And I just walked up and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this like I'm doing the podcast. I'm just going to ask some questions when I can. Hopefully I can get them to banter. I will say it seemed a little discombobulated because I would have a good question getting ready to happen, and Jesse would tap me and be like, I got a question right now. And I was like, oh, okay, here, take your question. And then I would forget my fucking question. And I'd be like, what was my question? And I'm sitting there not even listening to what they're saying on the panel, just trying to remember what the hell I was going to ask them. And then I was like, okay, come up with a new question. It's not worth it to worry about the old question. Just move forward. But they shockingly, and this is crazy to even think about, Robert and Kerrigan had never met Carla face to face in real life. They had worked together for countless number of years, but they had never been together in that capacity. And that was the first time the three of them have shared the stage and done a panel together. So that was entirely like really kind of the underlying overwhelming thing for me that I was like, okay, don't fuck this up. You can just have fun with it. And that's what I did. And ultimately, once I settled into just having fun, and Brando, like you said, sitting down helped. If I'd have been standing, I would have been nervous and you would have been able to tell because I'd have been moving. But I could just sit down and just focus on what they were saying. And they had playful banter. There were some interesting stories. I know Kerrigan, I got him to tell a story he'd only ever told once before in the history of his life. So that was pretty cool. We had some nice crowd participation. It was really good. It was a really fun experience to do that panel. And I was very, very, very happy with how it came off according to other people, because I wasn't really hearing it.
Yeah, I think there was a really good fan who asked a question like right off the bat. I can't think of who he might have skipped into the panel.
I'm pretty sure it's you.
Not really sure. Oh, it was me. Yeah. So like I'm like on Jesse level of Power Rangers fandom. Like this was my childhood, and so when I found out that Rita and Zed and Goldar were all going to be in the same con that I was going to, I was already nerding out. And then the panel happened, which I actually didn't know about. And so, like, when the time for questions came up, I skipped my sorry carcass right up to that stage, and I basically professed my love for Power Rangers. And the best part was that Zed was like, wasn't there a question you're supposed to be asking? I'm like, no questions.
You're just like, I'm fanboying. Let me do this. You're like, I have to tell you these
I was.
things.
I basically almost teared up on stage, and like Rita or Carla was like very moved by that because of just the passion I was showing for Power Rangers, and I got to interact with them all afterwards. And I'm actually currently wearing the Goldar for President shirt that Kerrigan was selling at his booth.
Which color did you get?
I got red.
Damn it, I got red too, but I asked for black, and he's like, I don't think I have any in your size. And I was like, oh. So it's
Yeah.
like
I wouldn't have been mad if I got black. I said, here's my size, and if you have when I less like the feel of that, and he goes, okay, and like actually got it on sale because it was the last day, because I'm smart like that, and but yeah, and that was a very fun panel. You and Jess did a great job, and I was really glad I got to listen to it, and those are some really nice people.
Yeah, it was definitely an honor, and it was crazy. And the wild thing is that the Power Ranger panel happens, and I was already on like an emotional high anyways. So it was like overload to the point that once I was done with that, I was ready to just go home and sleep. But me and Brando, and Brando, myself, and our friend Tony did another podcast inside the game room during the show. And then it was time for me to hit the hay and call it an evening. But to actually get into this, and Brandon, I'll ask you, what did you think of the 100, Brando?
You know what? I really didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it because
You too, huh?
I went straight from the Star Trek panel to the 100.
Yep.
So by that, like any sort of nerves that I would have had were shed.
Oh yeah,
Because I
totally.
knew the hard part, that was the Star Trek panel. That was done. Now I get to sit down and BS with my friends like I do once a week anyway.
Yeah.
So now all I had to worry about was, plug in Jimmy John's like I got asked to, and I said, well,
Jimmy
of course,
John's, Jimmy John's.
Yeah, dude, come on, man. I'll plug Jimmy John's. But I feel like it came across well. We had some challenges. Of course, we were not advertised or announced, but that is because of the situation that we sort of had. We had an agreement with our friend Wes, who kind of helped set us up, that if we helped out, he would try to get us somewhere where we could do a live podcast for the 100th. And it just so turns out that we were able to use a stage for an hour, and that was great. And of course, if you listen to the 100th, we started off with just 2 people watching.
Yeah.
And slowly throughout the show, people started sitting down and getting engaging, like not even just for the questions, but I don't know about you, Nate, but for the people who were sitting there, I was actively looking at them when I was talking.
Yeah.
And to be able to see them either nod their head or shake their head, I love that. And it was really cool. I do notice that since we were only allotted so much time, I feel like some stuff was a little bit rushed.
Agreed.
We were talking a little bit faster than usual because, like, we're over Skype right now. I don't know how much more laid back I can be. I'm in my game room that has no AC with a fan on me in complete most darkness, and I'm in my gaming chair with only the glow of my laptop in front of me. And, like, I was sitting here watching E3 stuff, watching a game I didn't care about, and I almost fell asleep. So I'm not going to fall asleep to the podcast, but it's a much different environment. When you're sitting there, you have to do a podcast. You're going to talk to your friends, but in a somewhat of a weird way, you also have to seem entertaining more so to people watching, or to try and get people to watch you, because you want to engage in interesting conversation, but you're also looking to at least let them enjoy themselves a little bit by your presence. And so that was indeed challenging, but I kind of feel like acting natural sort of did that anyway, because we just have Nate, you and me have known each other since 2002 or 1 at least.
Yeah, somewhere
And
around there.
We've been in a band for a total combined of over 6.5 years.
Yep.
We have chemistry. Nobody bullshits better than Brandon and Nate. Okay, like we can sit here for hours and actively do nothing. But we do it well.
I agree.
So it's easy, and the 100th was easy. Listening to it, as you said, the volumes were peaked. It was awesome once we started getting questions. It was awesome once we started getting interactions. I just wonder what it must have been like to walk in here to us, 3 nerdy guys sitting on a stage, talking about DC Rebirth, whatever we were talking about, noticing a blow-up mattress on there with us not mentioning it
at
all until it was time. I just, in fact, I want to say, didn't Chris, one of Wes's friends, come up to us, because he was only there for a little bit to see what we were doing. He came up to us and said, hey guys, what was the point of the blow up mattress on the stage?
Yeah, and they didn't know.
But-
We had to share that story, which is fine. It's a great story.
Oh, yeah, but I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, man, there were only a couple things I noticed that I wasn't happy with. I felt like I rushed the intro. I said, "How are you doing?" You asked how I was doing, and I didn't give a fuck how I was doing. I wanted to introduce Wes. Because that's a running problem in my life. I always fucking forget Wes, even though I don't forget him at all. So
Can we just take a second? Can we just take a second to thank him profusely for that weekend?
seriously, it was. There are so many cool opportunities that came to us because of that weekend. Some stuff I can talk about, other stuff not so much right now. But just the opportunity to be there, to be a part of the con, then the opportunity for us to both get to host panels on stuff we're passionate about, and then to top it off, when Brandon and I were driving there, we weren't even certain we would be doing the podcast in front of anybody. And
Yeah.
when Wes on Friday's like, it looks like we've got this noon spot where you guys are going to just be able to creep in on Saturday and have an hour of the stage. And it was just like, please let that be true. Please let that be true. And then there was drama, and it almost wasn't true. And I got there Saturday just like, if this doesn't go off, I'm going to probably be salty, and I'm going to try my best not to be salty because I've got to do this panel. But man, talk about getting your hopes up and then getting them shot down. And then luckily, everything played out how it was supposed to. We got to do our show. Everybody was happy. It all worked out. Todd, from your perspective, I'm guessing this was the first time you'd probably ever heard Journey into Comics.
Yes.
What was your gut reaction when we start? And then was it the giveaway that gets you to stand up and ask a question? Or did you feel like, I've got some questions for these guys. Let's solve the problems?
Well, it's just okay. First of all, as a podcast, in the show, I know this was I could tell, like, maybe at the beginning, you even said like this was your first ever live show, so that always comes with complications that sometimes you just can't foresee. But you guys played it well. I mean, you talked about like a lot of the big issues. You talked about Rebirth. You talked about Civil War. You talked about Superman. Talked about Apocalypse. You guys kept going, and that's the important thing, especially once Brandon over there was like interact. Say I was looking at the fans, and I was looking at those who were there, and like that's the important part because that way it's not just two guys talking to each other. You're talking to a crowd who's actually who is listening to you,
Exactly.
and so that was really good. And then when the Q&A came about, it was just natural for me to go ask a question because I asked a question about, of course, about Pandora and Rebirth, and that was just one that I had commented about in various websites as they reviewed Rebirth and blah 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 blah. But I just wanted to hear someone else's take on it. And I actually really did like what you said, Nate, about what happened and everything. But it felt just natural for me. And then when we started doing like the shouting banter about what was better, BVS or Civil War, that was just fun.
We're gonna have to break that down a little bit more too, because I did, unfortunately, with my nerves and how everything kind of went that day, and knowing I had to prep for the Power Ranger panel and knowing I had to tear all the shit down, I never really got back to your booth. I know we played some games up in the game room and stuff together, but I never went to your booth and actually got to
You did?
go. Didn't you race me in Mario Kart once on Saturday, just for
Yes.
S's and G's, right? Yeah,
yeah.
But
I lost horribly. I'm not afraid to.
That's okay. I'm not afraid to say that it's the one game I can say like I can hang my hat on that I'm actually kind of decent at,
No, you were good. You were really good.
Well, that goes without saying. More importantly, though,
Wow, such humbleness.
I mean that's who I am. But really, man, it was really cool to interact with just the crowd in general, but then to have someone who's also a creator want to talk to us about stuff. And I never really got back to your booth to talk about BVS or Civil War, which is better. And I think we can do that maybe right now, just to quickly break it down. We don't have to really
I got 5 minutes.
That's fine. That's all it's going to take for me to get my point across too. Because
Do you want to go first?
that's fine, because my points are actually going to shock you, because while I thought BVS is a good film, I thought they had some things that were really cool and that they could build on. I feel like the overall handling of the DCU mixed with the CW verse has been poorly handled, And in that
In some ways, I will agree with that.
In that one decision alone, in the decision that I will not see Grant Gustin as the Flash on the big screen, and that Ezra Miller doesn't look like anybody who should even be looking similar to Barry Allen. There's no way that guy is Barry Allen. I don't believe it. So with that being said, that one handling, which they might be able to remedy it. You never know. Things are still early on. BVS was really their launching point for their universe. But one thing I have to say is that when your movie comes out, and as soon as your movie comes out, we're told, hey, there's a rated R version. It's a lot longer, and it's actually better. It's the ultimate version. You guys will get on Blu-ray eventually. It kind of soured the movie for me because it's like, you guys put all this fucking money and marketing into this, and you didn't even believe in it enough to let the director tell you what cut was going to work for the vision he was going for. That's a poor choice. As to where I feel on the flip side really quick with Civil War, to me, that was the time where Marvel got to turn things around. Ike Perlmutter had left. Kevin Feige kind of had that. It was his voice directly to Disney, and they were listening to what he said. And he was going, here are some of the things the Russos are probably going to need. And if they ask for a bigger budget, you guys should probably do it because they've got a really good idea going. And it shows in the movie that there's this fluidity. Do they suffer? Do both movies suffer from a lot of the same issues? Like Brando said on the 50th or on the 100th? Yeah. When heroes fight each other, as Brando told you and told me and told everybody else, when heroes fight each other, somebody has to be the stupid one. Somebody has to play the dumb guy. Somebody has to be ignorant to what's going on. I will say Batman vs. Superman did that better because I did not like the handling of Tony Stark in Civil War and how it just kind of... It just kind of fizzles out, you know?
It did.
But ultimately, and this is the last little pillar of my thought, it's not an argument, it's just a thought because we both have our own opinions. Yeah. To me, the lack of comedy in the Batman vs. Superman film, in the DCU as a whole, has been the one thing that's lacking. I get that they're telling these serious stories. I get that there's a lot of really deep, dense material they're trying to work through, but it does not take any time to throw a quip one-liner in there from one character just to lighten it just a pinch. You sit through BVS and it's 2.5 hours and it feels like 2.5 hours because it's just a dark tone. Your body can't handle consistently being dealt with darkness unless you're prepared. And when it comes to superhero movies, I want to be enlightened. My thought is with superhero movies, I want to leave that movie feeling like, damn it, I wish I was that character. Ant-Man did it for me. I was like, fuck, Ant-Man's so great. I want to be tiny. I want to get big and be strong and then be tiny and punch things really hard. That's cool. Spider-Man, same thing, you know. In any of the Spider-Man movies, I'm always in awe because he's such a great character. Batman is a phenomenal character. Superman in this movie he kind of was a plot point, essentially. Was Superman a character of BVS? Kinda. But what did they use him for that really helps their universe? It wasn't him being Superman. It was him, spoilers, dying as Superman. So that's where, to me, the movies differ. Now that I've had some time to sit on BVS, would I give it a higher rating? Probably a little bit higher. But to me, there's something about Civil War, they got me. But that's all I got.
First of all, I want to commend you, not just for your honesty, but for your actual thoughtfulness in your descriptions, because this is something personal for me. Basically, since Batman v Superman had like those early screenings, like with the critics, and you all know about that.
Oh
but
God, it was a shit show.
Exactly, and I mean, here's the thing: we as humans, regardless of race, we are intelligent enough, with probably a few exceptions, we all know those people, to form opinions, and it is our right, it is our duty to make those opinions and then stand by them. Now, we can be swayed, we can be enlightened, there's a good word for it, and have those opinions changed, but we should not base our experiences on other people's opinions. If Batman v Superman and Apocalypse and Civil War have taught me anything, it's that I'm never going to listen to another movie review, because everything there was the incredibly 50-50 reviews of Batman v Superman. You either loved it or you hated it. Then there was Civil War, which it had like amazing reviews, and then the few reviews that I actually felt were honest got blasted because it's like, oh man, it's this site, oh, they always give low scores. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. And then Apocalypse, which I think I noted at the podcast, was my favorite X-Men movie. Now, full stop. I actually put above BVS and Civil War. It got meh reviews, and it was like, oh, Apocalypse has set back the X-Men franchise, 10 years. And I'm just like, what are they watching that I'm not? Or what am I seeing that they're not? And it just reinforces the fact to me that if you are a fan of DC or Marvel or any major franchise and you want to go see a movie, don't look at the reviews. Go see that movie. And then when you are done, if you like it, say it and be happy. If you didn't like it, say it. Say what you thought could have been better, then move on. But don't let other people sway you because, it not just hurts us, it just makes us more of a toxic culture. And it made me really sad because, people were complaining about what was happening with BVS. And then when I watched Civil War, I saw the exact same problems they were citing in BVS, but no one was saying anything because the only thing they were saying is revenue. Oh, it's made $1 billion. And I'm like, it's the 13th freaking film and it has all the Avengers in it except for 2. It better make $1 billion. Where everyone's like, oh, well, clearly BVS is a flop. It made almost $900 million. Yeah, it's a flop. It's a flop because clearly Warner Brothers wanted $1 billion from this movie. Okay, I grant you, they probably did want $1 billion from this movie because the last 2 Batman movies made $1 billion. But it still made nearly $900 million, is technically the biggest box office opening for a superhero movie of all time. You can blame Marvel for their staggered release on that one, to be fair. But it's gotten all these accolades, and people are saying that $900 million run is a flop. Are you freaking kidding me?
Well, and I think some of that, just to quickly interject, some of the reasons that the BVS monetary side of that is so poor is because they put so much money into marketing. They had to make $1 billion to really make money. And to Warner Brothers, I think that was really the telltale sign. And it kind of, I think, is going to be a blessing in disguise for you, for me, for all comic book fans, is now Jeff Johns is actually in control. And I don't know about you, but I'll follow that motherfucker to war.
I trust Jeff Johns. I trust
because he's so smart. He's so smart. He is a true comic book fan. He's, like I said,
absolutely.
He's the Kevin Feige of the DCU now, and that allows him.
He could be. Let's be fair. He has to earn that title.
He does have to earn it and knock some shit out of the park. But I worry. There's only one thing I worry about is him getting it after the first movie that's supposed to set up their universe going to be the downfall of their universe based on the fact that now if there's anything he wants to undo that happened in BVS, it's going to be noticeable.
Well, I think Johns is a respectful enough individual that he won't do that. He will, because whether you loved it or hated it, it's canon. And for anyone, for Marvel, for DC to do anything to their movies to unwrite canon or undo canon, barring something absolutely tragic, like I'm talking like real world, like actors, dying, leaving, that kind of thing, that I don't think that'll happen. And to denote this, look at Marvel, because Marvel had Iron Man, it was good, very good, $100 million, but then it had Hulk, which was $55 million. Then it had Captain America, $60 million, Thor, $70 million. Iron Man 2, which is easily like one of the most reviled Marvel films, despite making all that money. They used those smaller stones to set the big ones, so that when Avengers came out, they were like, okay, let's do this, and then bam, it was there. It was good. And I see the same thing here with BVS. Again, whether you loved it or hated it, Warner Brothers knows. They're like, okay, we may have made mistakes here. They brought in Jeff Johns. Ben Affleck is now the executive producer of Justice League, which I think is going to be important here because he knows how to make a film. The solo Batman film is going to be made made, directed, and starred by Ben Affleck. It's like, as if we couldn't put more work on him.
That might be
You know-
easy for him, though. I mean, think of
Oh,
like
it will. He's done The Town. He's done Gone Girl. You know, he's
Argo.
done Argo, yeah, of course. You know, Argo. So, but I see this as they took a swing. Whether you believe it hit or miss is based on your opinion, which you're entitled to, and they've learned from it. And so now I'm still looking forward to Suicide Squad, which is has nothing to do with Zack Snyder.
Correct.
You know, and I'm not insulting Zack Snyder. Again, I still got to talk about why I like BVS more than Civil War. But then we got Wonder Woman, which I am really looking forward to. Like, everyone agrees, regardless of what you think of Batman v Superman, the Wonder Woman was awesome, and so we're looking forward to her. And then obviously Justice League. And so I think that they will use this to say, okay, we have the time. Justice League just started filming. We have the time. Let's make it right, and let's make sure that Justice League is as good as Avengers. Because if Justice League does not make $1 billion, then it's a failure. Absolutely no contest. It cannot be considered a success unless it makes $1 billion. Because between the advertising, the hype, the actors, the production, it needs to make $1 billion. So there. Now, I'm not saying it has to make 200 million opening weekend like Avengers. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying goal wise, the number is 1 billion. Now, going back to BVS for Civil War, my thoughts are this: what made Batman v Superman special to me was that, in my opinion, this was a character study. And I know that sounds odd in a superhero film because you think about the action, and of course they were teasing the big fight scene and everything. But for me, I really thought about what Batman and Superman's roles in this world were. And when I thought about that as watching the film and seeing all the events unfold, it really made me appreciate both the characters and what Zack Snyder was doing. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I actually liked what Zack Snyder did. I'm sorry. Because for me, and I really think about this, and especially with everything that's been going on in our world today, I can't look at this camera that's not on right now and look at your avatars that I can't see your eyes in and say to you that Superman, as we know him in the comics, truth, justice, the American way, and the hope, the smile, everything. I can't look at you and say that in our world that's how he would be right off the bat, because he wouldn't. Because in this world, as Kevin Costner epically portrayed as Jonathan Kent, he said the world isn't ready, and if things go wrong, they might shun you, and that gets downplayed because they're like, oh, he's telling him to be depressing. No, he's telling him to be cautious because people are fickle. One of the best lines in Batman v Superman was from Perry White, the amazing Lawrence Fishburne, where he tells Clark, this isn't 1938 anymore, and which is the year that Superman was created. And it's so true, because in 1938 we needed that hope. We needed that, that truth, justice, the American way. And even when Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were making Superman, they were like, we want to make a character that looks alien, is alien, and yet he still aspires to be everything that this world wants him to be. And that's how Superman was portrayed for years. But in a modern take, that's not going to fly, because there's no way, when we can't even handle our own races, we can't handle an alien coming in and being in the world. And so seeing him do these things, from the opening scene where he saved Lois because that's one of the few people he fully trusts, and then seeing him see the judgment that the people were throwing at him, and willingly, he didn't have to do this, but willingly walking into the Senate committee to hear their words, to hear their judgment, not even saying a word. He didn't say a word in that whole scene, and people ripped him for that. But it was just like, what was he supposed to say? What was he supposed to do except listen and understand? Because that's what Superman would do. And then you got Batman, a character who apparently, because we haven't seen it technically, has been 10 plus years as this vigilante in Gotham, and he's seen so much. He's seen monsters, he's seen supervillains, he's seen psychopaths. We have confirmed a dead Robin, and that's not even saying anything about his relationship with Commissioner Gordon. And you see him look at Superman, this man who is all powerful, is an alien, could kill all of us with a whim. With a breath, he can create hurricanes. He can do that much damage. And he just looks at him and thinks, this is going to be the end of us. And that's incredibly Batman logic, because Batman does think that way in the comics, that Superman is the greatest threat in this world. And so seeing him armor up for war, wanting to take him down, that was totally believable for me. And I'll save the Martha scene for later because that's important to my Civil War breakdown, but it just felt right. Now, yes, you could argue there were certain points. Was Doomsday shoehorned a little, but I don't think they would have ever done the Superman film
You could.
outside of this, which I'm actually glad they did. As for your comment about him dying as Superman, I think that really proved that this could be the stepping stone to getting that truth, justice, the American way Superman, because he, even with all the hate that was thrown at him, even with everything that Lex Luthor and Batman had done intentionally and unintentionally, he saved Lex Luthor from Doomsday after he was clearly going to punch him to death, and B, he was willing, after almost getting nuked in space, crashing to Earth, saving Lois, having the kryptonite spear, he was still willing to kill him. He didn't kill himself, but he was willing to risk himself to stop Doomsday because he knew that was the right thing to do. Now, going to Civil War, my biggest problem, which was arguably the biggest problem, was that you can shoot down just about every single argument that both General Ross and Tony Stark were saying in about a minute's time.
True.
Maybe less. When that woman at the MIT thing accosted Tony Stark because her son was supposed to be there and he died in Sokovia, that was touching. That's undeniable. It was touching because you could see the pain in her eyes. But for Tony to be so affected by that, and yet eat shawarma after Coulson's death, which was the rallying cry of the Avengers, that rang really hollow. And then it was, oh, we need supervision. Why do we need supervision? Because we're dangerous without it. Really? Wasn't it the government, the World Security Council, that tried to nuke New York during the battle? Well, that's different. Oh, okay, well, what about Ultron? Wasn't that your fault? And even then it was unintentional. And, if we didn't blow up Sokovia, it would have, destroyed the whole world. Well, that's not the point. Yes, it is the point. And the whole point of this massive council, while I understand it would have cost so many more lives to have that council overseeing the Avengers than it would for the Avengers to been doing what they were doing. And then for them to try and hammer home that this council was vital, that this council was needed to save lives. I was just thinking, how many lives are you killing for the minutes that you were rallying this council together to tell the Avengers, okay, you can go here, okay, you can go here, and no, you can't go here. And it really just escalated from there. And, I actually thought that using the Winter Soldier as the catalyst was actually rather brilliant. As this was clearly not what happened in the Civil War comic. That was a completely different thing. But it really did work, and it really did bring certain characters together. But then other parts just fell apart. Baron Zemo, in my opinion, he wasn't even Baron Zemo. He was Colonel Zemo. That was his highest rank. And it was just like total waste of a character. And then you had all this flip-flopping. Like, people were chastising certain characters for flip-flopping. What about Black Widow? She was the one who brought in T'Challa. She was the one who, was there telling Steve, we need to do this. And then at like this key moment where he's trying to escape, she has him basically dead to rights, and she goes, "Oh crap, fine, go ahead and get in the plane, get out of here." And it's like betrays T'Challa. I'm like, what the frick, woman? Okay, what the frick, woman? And and then there's Tony. He really got played. Okay, I'm going to get into this. The Martha scene. Everyone's making fun of Batman v Superman because of the Martha scene, and I still to this day can't understand why. And I'm sure one of you will explain it to me. But my thing is this: for Bruce, and I was actually really happy that they showed the death of the Wayne scene because of this. Thomas Wayne's last word was Martha, because he was thinking about his wife. And so when Superman, he's about to get stabbed with the kryptonite spear, and he goes, Martha, you have to say Martha. Of course Batman's going to react to that. It's his freaking mother's name. And then he's like, and he would have the perfect reaction. Why are you saying that? And Lois says, that's his mother's name. Now, yes, it's kind of cheesy, maybe, and yes, it's completely coincidental, but hey, that's comics, everybody. There's a lot weirder things that happens in comics than two characters having the same name. Think about it. How many of Superman's love interests or allies or even enemies have the initials LL? Okay? It's like, it's comics. Weird things happen. And then, so everyone's like, it's criticizing that it's so stupid. How could Batman react to that? And then in Civil War, like, a month later, Tony Stark, in the course of 5 minutes, goes from, Captain, I was wrong. Bucky, hey, Manchurian candidate, don't have to point that gun at me. I understand you were brainwashed. We're good. I understand. I'm sorry. He went from that to, seeing his parents die by the Winter Soldier's hands. He punches Winter Soldier, which was justified. That first punch was totally justified. Then he confronts Captain, and he proceeds to try and kill Bucky. And when Cap goes, it wasn't him. He was brainwashed. Tony's exact words were, I don't care. He killed my mom. Really? And no one criticized him for that. I'm like, really? This climax of a moment, this battle that happened after that was completely meaningless because he just said, I don't care that this is brainwashed. I don't care this was all set up. I don't care that we've manipulated since day one. Bucky killed my mom. I'm going to kill him now. You can stand over there and watch me kill him. And then like the whole, you don't deserve that shield. My dad made that shield. Really? I mean, and this is what you're talking about earlier, Nate, where when heroes fight heroes, someone has to be the stupid one. That was totally Tony Stark. And it's just, it boggles my mind that, are we so blinded by certain things that we can't see that there was a list. I saw a meme, and it was a list of all the similarities between Batman v Superman and Civil War, and it was just a very detailed list and everything. And I was like, didn't notice that. I noticed that. Didn't notice that. But people are saying like these are two totally different movies. No, it's not. Okay, but it's been documented that the Russo brothers found out about Batman v Superman and go, crap, we really got to make Civil War now because this is going to happen. This has got to happen now. So the reason Batman v Superman was better for me because I felt that, certain flaws aside, and it did have flaws, undeniable. I did not give it a perfect score in my review. I felt it was a better character study and more believable fighting situation because this was Batman thinking that Superman is the ultimate threat and he needs to be taken out versus Superman thinking versus an outdated concept of justice. Where when you see the bat signal, don't go to it. Bat is dead. Bury it. Consider this mercy. That's Superman. That really is Superman because he could have easily just broken Batman and say don't come back. He busted the Batmobile, which you could argue was worse. Okay, let's be honest. You don't mess with a guy's car.
No.
And he does that, but he still walks away. And then Batman comes for him. The only reason that fight even happened was because Martha was kidnapped. The reason that the Civil War fight happened was because they were being manipulated from day one. And yes, I know Lex manipulated Superman. This is a little different. And instead of listening to reason, they fought. And yes, I know Batman kind of was not listening to reason either, but he had no reason to believe it. They had no history beforehand, whereas Cap and Tony, if they had taken 5 minutes during that airport thing, which was the most amazing superhero fight I've ever seen, just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, stop hating on me. It felt hollow. And I think, if I remember my scores correctly, I gave Batman v Superman a 91% and Civil War an 87%. So, it wasn't, by score-wise, you'd think it's not that much better. And technically it wasn't. They were still great movies. I'm still going to own both of them when they come out to DVD. It's just that there were certain plot points that just felt hollow for me in Civil War that didn't in Batman v Superman. And, yeah. So...
Well,
okay.
Go ahead, Brando.
Okay. I've been quiet for quite some time.
Oh, here we go.
All right. Well, because, I have something very short to say on my end. Now, and I'm going to tell you exactly what my problem is with Batman v Superman.
By all means. You have that right.
Okay. And it's the same problem that Man of Steel has. It tries to be two movies in one. Man of Steel tried to be the origin and sequel at the same time. Please note that I did not even watch Man of Steel until the night before I saw Batman v Superman.
Interesting.
Yeah, just for some reason, it never happened. I never saw it in theaters. It came out. I never saw it. And then I'm like, I want to go see Batman v Superman. I better get brushed up on this universe.
Yeah, pretty much.
I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a little, rushed, okay? I kind of feel Batman v Superman has the same problem where it's a little rushed, and as we know now, it was a 4-hour movie whittled down to 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I was surprised by that, for the record.
Yeah, me too.
And for the record, I also don't think they should have put the whole 4 hour or even 3.5 hour because we as fans have limits. I mean, even kids have limits. Okay, like the longest movie. I'm sorry to cut you off, but the longest movie I've ever seen in a movie theater was Lord of the Rings, And I'm like waiting during Fellowship of the Ring. I'm like, Dad, is this movie almost over? It's like almost 3 hours. And he goes, it's almost done, Todd. You just got to hold it. You're almost done. And then, like 3 hours for each movie. And, I don't know if we could handle that in a superhero film, even nowadays. So that's why I'm fine with the Ultimate Edition. Okay, but go by all means, continue.
Well, obviously, that's why they waited until the home release to do that, so you could pause the movie. Now, do I think Batman v Superman deserves the hit it gets? Absolutely not. In fact, the more I reflect on it, the more I like the film. And the more I think about Civil War, the less I like the film.
Wow.
Now, Civil War, my main issue, and I like all your points, that it, like, and you can sort of argue this about BVS too, because we know better, but there's really no lasting effects.
That was another issue I had. Like, well, compare Civil War to like Winter Soldier or even Ultron. If you really want to do that, even Ultron, what was the impact at the end? Because we know they're going to come together for Infinity War.
Yep. Of course. Now, see, BVS, people will say, well, Superman died. Well, we all know how that ends. So that's not really an effect, but the direct effect of this movie is Batman feels like an idiot.
He does.
And so he's going to be right by this. And for all intents and purposes, this is what's going to have him search out and try and pretty much form something that could be the equivalent of an Earth Protector like Superman in the Justice League. Yeah. That is a direct byproduct of what Superman did.
Yeah, and just adding to that, between that Lex Luthor scene where we know, we all knew Darkseid was coming, but I mean, now it's just like, because he could have just ended it right there. He could have, been at the funeral and then just say, I made a mistake, I will do better in Gotham. But he knows Darkseid is coming, and he knows he was the one who sent the other files of the Justice League members to Wonder Woman, and so they have to form the Justice League because it's needed. And then for the world, as a worldly view, they understand now they were wrong about Superman.
Yep.
Look how far he went to go to save it from a threat that was not only not alien, technically, but it was caused by one of us. Lex Luthor made Doomsday. So this was an earthly problem that was settled by this alien god who risked everything because he didn't want to see this world destroyed. And so that's the byproduct. Whereas the end of Civil War is like Tony's feeling like an idiot, as he should. And, he's putting Thunderbolt Ross on hold, as he should. And then Cap is somehow saving everyone from the raft. I never really understood that part, but whatever. And then she's like, okay, next stop, Infinity War, because there's no Captain America movie after this. There's no Iron Man movie after this. There's only Thor, which has Hulk, which were not in Civil War. And then all the other new characters like Doctor Strange and Black Panther, best part of the Civil War easily. And so on. So, where's the impact?
Right.
That was a great point. Where's the impact?
Yeah. Now, I will say that, I think my initial score for Batman v Superman was, I think it was somewhere around the 70%, a 7 point something. I think on my at the time I said, feeling generous, I'm gonna give it a 7.5. I think it's closer to a 7. I think that's risen up, and I want to see the extended cut to see if that helps, because I feel like Civil War was a better put together movie. It was a little bit more focused.
I agree.
In that respect, so it's an easier movie to watch. Whereas Batman v Superman, and I said this on the 100th, a lot of lines of dialogue that really explain how a character is feeling is relegated to one line. Like the whole scene with Batman where he's pretty much admitting to himself and the audience that he was an idiot is one line. I failed him in life, I will not fail him in death. That is him saying, yep, that's me. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I will, I'm going to try and fix this. But that's just one line. Yeah. And there's multiple times in the movie where it's just the history, because this movie being set in now in a universe that's much larger and denser than what we could have originally imagined for like a starting point. It actually has a lot of history behind it. A lot of the history stuff was relegated to one line as well. Whereas on the flip side, Civil War sometimes went too into detail. It's like, well, okay, we don't need to know that much, but it does serve the end purpose.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to see the extended cut.
Me too.
I want to see it, and then I'll be honest, I'm liking the film a little bit better in hindsight, and I really enjoy both of your guys' points.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, one thing we have on the list, and this is something now to sort of steer the ship.
Yeah, we got to get back on track here.
Yeah. One thing we like to do for all our guests, Todd, is to sit back and really reflect on our journey into comics. So everybody that comes on, we like to ask, what was your journey into comics? How did you get into comics?
I was born a poor black child. No. Anyone who gets that joke, you are awesome. Okay. They think I am a jerk or something. I was born and raised on superhero cartoons. I grew up in that golden age of Batman, the animated series, Superman animated series, Spider-Man animated series, X-Men animated series, X-Men Evolution, Justice League, Batman Beyond, Static Shock, Teen Titans, the original. And it's just, I love superheroes. And so for the longest time, and then of course the movies were coming out, good and bad. And so this was my life. And then I went to college for video game development nearby in Parkland. And one day I was on IGN and I saw something for an event called Dark Reign. And I looked at it and it was like, oh, Norman Osborn has basically taken over the world. And he's assembling a cabal to basically oversee things to make sure the world goes smoothly to his vision. I'm like, that's kind of awesome. I like that. And this was just after Secret Invasion and everything. And so I was like, I should probably see if I have a comic book store nearby. Because I had not gotten comics at all as a kid, and, family and money and all that stuff. So I went and I found out there was actually a comic book store like 2 blocks from my school. And so I started buying comics and I got really into it. I read equal amounts of DC and Marvel. For anyone who was doubting that, via my BVS Civil War breakdown, I'm an equal opportunity fanboy.
Me too.
Thank you. Exactly. It's like people say, "Oh, you're a DC fanboy." No, I just like this movie better. So where was I? Oh yeah. So I was reading comics, and then I'm an idea guy. Like I love writing stories, and that was part of the reason I got into game development because I dream and still dream of writing like video game stories. And I just got into this thing where I was like, I wonder what my comic would be. And so I went to Chicago to finish my college career. Went to DePaul University, and there was a Comic-Con there. It's called C2E2, and it's awesome. But as this was going to be my first Comic-Con ever, so I go there and I find out there's a panel called Making Comics the Marvel Way. It's a panel I frequent every year, and I do it to bug the Marvel people. No, it's like, why haven't you hired me yet? No, I kind of say that. No, I don't. So I go there, and this was still very early in my thinking of what would eventually become my Comic Guardians. And I go there, and Matt Fraction was there at that panel. He, of course, did the amazing Invincible Iron Man. That's where I got into his writing style, and he's done numerous other comics after that. And I go and say, hey, I kind of have an idea for a comic, and I kind of want to do it. What would your advice be? And he goes, if you want to make a comic, you're the writer, find an artist, and go make comics. I'm like, okay. So it took about 2 years because, money issues. I was finishing school, and I was under the delusion that I could find an artist for free to make this comic for me. And there's a myth. It's not a myth, but very unlikely. And so I was at this point in my life after school that I had this dead end job. I was just miserable. And I was like, if I don't do something to pull me out, and I was technically, but it just wasn't enough. I was like, if I don't do something to advance my life, I am going to die, essentially. And so I said, okay, let's do it. Pony up, get the money, and make comics. And so I did. And I found 2 artists, one named Alex Garcia, who was actually with me on another project, and another guy named Ing Chi Chua. And we made what was my comic, Guardians, which is my version of the superhero genre. Stories that I want to tell with characters I thought were very unique and new-ish, because nothing's new under the sun. And so we made Guardians, and Ing Chi actually had to drop out after number 0 because he had to do other projects and everything. He wasn't going to have time to help. Alex said, dude, let me step up. I'll do all the art for you. And I go, okay. So we made the first 2, and this was during Comixology submits like Birth, and so we submitted it on there. So we did 3 issues, and I had to stop. And then finally, about 6 to 8 months after I submitted it, it got on Comixology, and it was horrible. It was like mind numbing, because I was doing nothing. essentially, except for like some writings on the side and like not making comics. And so finally it got there, and I was like, oh yeah, we kind of ended on a cliffhanger because I submitted them like back to back to back, and then because of simple errors, they got the other 2 issues were forced off of Comixology at first, and so I had to fix them and then resubmit them. So we finished Guardians number 3, and I had to stop again because of financial issues. And then about another 7 months, I was just sat down. I was like, I gotta keep going. I can't stop. I just can't. And so I talked to Alex. We strike a deal, and we just start making these. We start cranking them out like bi-monthly, and we started with that on that deal with Guardians number 4, and now we're on Guardians number 16. And I'm loving every minute of it. I'm doing cons. I'm doing podcasts. Yeah,
We like having you on podcasts.
Thank you. And then about technically, almost literally, a year ago, Oni Press, a very established publisher, was doing a open submission for writers. You have an idea? Pitch to us. We'll see what we think. We'll pick a few and we'll make comics. I'm like, okay. And honestly, I hadn't really thought of any ideas at that point. I mean, you always flirt with, new ideas, spin-off series and everything. And I started thinking, like, what would my comic be? And the only rule was, there were 2 rules. I only picked up on one at first. The first rule was no superhero comics. Totally understandable. Not that kind of publisher. Totally get it. So I started thinking of a fantasy series, which was another genre I love. And I had this big, grand, massive Jonathan Hickman style, wheels within wheels kind of thing. And I called it Shift. And then I reread the submission guidelines just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And it said, must be miniseries to start, 4 to 6 issues. Like, crap. So I was like, okay, I obviously can't do this story. So what can I do? And I like the idea that I had with Shift. I decided, hey, let's tone it down a little bit, reduce the scale. And then I came up with Home, which is the comic I am indeed making. And so I submitted it to Oni. It got rejected, but I just loved the idea of it. And I actually had a guy who disappeared afterwards. I kid you not. He made this pic of the main character of Alicia, and I loved it so much. I was like, let's try and do it. Let's try and make it. And I knew I couldn't do it on my own, and I didn't want to get Alex involved because he was doing Guardians, of course. And so I found these new artists. One was Din Nguyen, who was actually my second pick for Home. The first one had dropped out because of family issues. And then Bethany Varney as my colorist, and Zach Sam as my letterer. And I was like, okay, we're going to do this on Kickstarter, and let's see how it goes. And I had never had a successful Kickstarter. I had tried Guardians like 3 or 4 times on Kickstarter and failed horribly. And for whatever reason, we made it. And I was like, oh, we actually had, and I kid you not, because of like horror stories I had heard, I was looking at the clock at 11:59 p.m., waiting for it to become midnight so that my Kickstarter would close, just so I know that no one could cancel out and like screw us, which could have happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we made it. We did it. We're doing Home. And so we made the first issue, and it was really fun. And, we got a lot of positive reviews, and I'm like, okay, let's do this again. And so we did Home number 2, and that was in February. And then we cut it a little closer, but we got funded. And now we're doing Home number 3. We're launching on Kickstarter. I think at the time this is releasing on June 20th, just in case. And yeah, that's it. And my dream is to work at DC or Marvel, but still write my indie stuff. And I just thinking about my journey into comics. I can't believe how far I've come, because technically speaking, I have like 18 issues under my name, with another one guaranteed and another one going on Kickstarter. So by the end of like 30 days, potentially, I could have 20 comics under my name, and people struggle to get to 2. And it's an interesting feeling, that's for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you on, our podcast to talk about Home.
Thank you.
And first of all, I got to ask, as now a 2-time successful Kickstarter, with your third one, What do you got? I mean, you've already got a fan base that wants to read this book.
In theory.
They've subscribed to issues 1 and 2 on your Kickstarter. I would assume there were some repeat customers. There weren't just people. There weren't people just joining your Kickstarter for home number 2 going, I don't give a fuck about home number 1. I just want to know what happened in the second issue. You know? So with this third one, like how mentally how do you go into this? Are you confident you guys just crush out of the gate? Are you trying new tactics?
It's really all of the above, because to kind of touch on what you were talking about, you're half right. There were repeat customers in home number 1, but we actually had less backers. With home number 2, but we had less backers than we had for home number 1. And there were a bunch of new people, and the reason that was because I put in several rewards. You'll get a digital copy of home number 1 if you pledge to this reward tier of home number 2. So I made sure that for anyone who, for whatever reason, did not see the first Kickstarter, they're covered. They can still read the whole story without having to go to the website, which I know some people are afraid of, and everything. So with home number 3, I'm taking that same approach, but doubling down. I have a lot of cosplay friends, and they're helping me out. We have currently 3 cosplayers helping out, offering unique prints for this Kickstarter, including AZ Power Girl Kara Nicole, the Super Sirens Ray and Hills, and Triple Diamond Cosplay Paige Blunk. They're all helping me out, and cosplay was one of the big successes of both number 1 and number 2. So I'm definitely trying to keep that rolling, but also I'm offering more digital copy rewards. More physical copy rewards. You can actually get all home number 1, number 2, and number 3 together, and so you can do like a sit down one night and just read it all and be caught up and be ready for home number 4. As for where I am mentally, it's tough, because obviously the first one I was freaking out. Every day that we didn't have a pledge was the most stressful day in the world, because I'm like, I have my phone, I have it linked up to where my Gmail account will tell me when we get emails about pledges, and so I'm like looking at my phone like every 15 minutes, just stressing me out. And then when we got to the goal, which was, I kid you not, on my birthday last year, November 3rd, we got funded for home number 1 on my birthday. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up, because we were ending like in 4 days, and I was just happenstance, and it was like, oh yeah, let's get funded on my birthday. Oh, we got funded on my birthday. Okay then. And then for home number 2, I was a little more confident, and it really showed in like the first day, where we actually got like, I think close to like $500 in the first day. But then like the pledges dropped off, because like then all like the dedicated people were gone, and then it was just promoting and pitching and trying to find people to talk about it. And so with this, I have no mental state, because I don't know what to expect. I could be funded in a week. I could be funded on the last day. I could be, crunching posts like right up to that to try and get those final few pages to push us over. I don't know. And I think with any Kickstarter, unless you're an established name, even if you've had successful Kickstarters before, it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful, because you don't know what their financial situation is, the backers. You don't know if they're still interested. That's actually one of the few things about this I don't like, is because it's been taking so long to make my comics, which is not an insult, but it's just, it's a process, that I have to try and say, hey, we are still doing this. If you want to finish it, the Kickstarter's here, we could use your help. Because if they lose interest, then they're not going to pledge. And they'll say, oh, I supported you the first 2 times, And I fully expect that to happen, because that's how people are sometimes. But I go into thinking, never stop promoting, think outside the box. I'm flirting with a home shirt idea, and I have an artist who actually met at Villains Con. She was at the table next to me, actually, and she's helping me make a shirt. And if we get that done in a good amount of time, I'll put that on there, because I know people like shirts, and they'll be able to wear the brand of home and everything. But I look at what worked. I looked at what didn't. I look at, can I lower rewards in their prices to maybe get more people? Like, the most popular reward is easily the $25 reward, because I have the cosplay rewards, which is you get the comic with a variant of that cosplayer, And in the case of Miss Power Girl, she's actually helping make the cover, so it's even more unique. And then you get a print of that person as cosplay. Like 2 of them are actually doing home cosplays. The third might, depending on her schedule. So that's there. And then I have another one where you get the entire Guardians series in PDFs along with the physical copy of Home number 3. So you, by the end of this Kickstarter, you're technically getting 20 comics for $25. So, I'm definitely making sure that that's out there and it's noted that that's how many comics you're getting. But then I'm also looking at and say, okay, the cosplay awards, maybe that's a little too expensive. So let's make it a little less money, but change the reward a little. So now I have a digital cosplay reward where it's $10. You get the physical copy of Home number 3, and you get a high-res digital print of one of our cosplayers of your choice, which I think might actually resonate with people. And so the Kickstarter culture is so tricky, and I respect anyone who tries to make sense of it and say do this, do that, or do the other thing. But it's just much like movies. It's incredibly subjective. What works for one person will not work for another. I know a person who said, you have to promote your Kickstarter 6 months ahead of time. I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. Okay. I kid you not. That was the thing. They said, you need to promote it like 6 months ahead of time. You need to be promoting it now. And I'm like, I have nothing to show. Why do I think they'll be ready to promote 6 months from it when I don't even know what they'll promote on the day or during the Kickstarter? So I technically like to do a month ahead of time. I'll set up like an FB event 2 weeks ahead of time so I can at least get an inkling of who might show up, and then I'll promote it all the way up until the Kickstarter, and then obviously once the Kickstarter hits, I go full throttle, because you can get people to say, oh, I'll help you, that sounds like a great idea and that'll be good, but until the Kickstarter hits, I don't know how much I could put stock into that, unless it's like personal friends or family, obviously, because then you can just bug them until they pledge and then they'll shut you up. Yeah, and so that's my take on it. And then I would like to think, especially now that I can say that Home number 3 is going to be the midway point of Alicia's story in Home, that it's it's going to get funded. I would like to think that the feedback I'm getting on the art, we actually changed artists for Home number 3. Bethany Varney is actually taking full over all the art duties minus lettering. And, I would like to think that the positive feedback I'm getting back from her art is indicative of the backers that might be pledging. But until the Kickstarter launches and until I get across that mark of $2,500 to make the comic, I'm not going to be content. I'm not going to be unstressed or de-stressed or not stressed or whatever, what have you, because I don't know that my comic's getting made. And even then, because, you hear the horror stories and, people pledging vast amounts and then they cancel like a day or two or an hour before the Kickstarter ends. And so unless I have an ungodly amount pledged, which I do not expect at all, the most I've gotten was $300 over our goal, And so until I know that I am funded, guaranteed, end of story, I'm not going to be content. And so my mental state will probably be very frazzled for the 30 some odd days we do this Kickstarter.
Well, there's good news though.
Oh, you're going to fund it all yourself? Thank you so much, Nate. Nate Phillips, everybody.
I wish I could.
I know.
Because I would. But here's the deal. So far, Brandon can attest to this, we've had now a total of 3 different Kickstarters on this show. We did Black Suited Death number 1, Speak No Evil number 1, and now Home number 3. The first 2 got funded and had way higher goals, like substantially.
Oh,
your goal is reasonable.
Thank you.
And it's pretty easy, I think, for us to help accommodate you to getting this out. So as I did with the other ones, I'm going to help you. Anytime you share a post that's about Home, I'll be sharing it right after you share it. And that's just how I do it. And we're just going to help to generate the buzz. I know that, I don't know if you ended up remembering to go to it or not, but you could always get thunderclap.it.
I did check it out, and I'm going to be doing it again.
Cool.
So, yeah. But I and all our listeners, because I technically haven't told you what Home is about. Home is a fantasy miniseries I'm doing. It's about a young woman named Alicia, and she was born with natural blue hair. And this makes her an outcast in her town. Her parents are dead. She has no friends. She works a dead-end job, and she's just stuck in this rut of a life until one day she realizes she can see living computer code. And once you see it, you'll understand it. And she realizes she can also manipulate this code. And when she does, things happen in the real world. More specifically, things get fixed in the real world. And we show that all throughout Home Number 1, which you can get via the Kickstarter. And it gets to the point where Alicia accidentally makes this code turn into a portal into another dimension, and she gets pulled into it. And now she's stuck in the world of Altaria, a place of knights and monsters and the origins of the code. And now she's stuck there until she can help these people with their problems so that she can go home, if she can get home, if she wants to go home. And unlike my Guardian story, which I still will say is very story-driven, I took a very much more character-focused approach for Home. So you're going to be able to, relate to Alicia, and you're definitely going to be rooting for Alicia. And then that's before, you meet all the knight characters and the monster street and all the battles. And we have some really cool characters in Home, like my knights, which look like a mix of Fire Emblem and Tron characters. We're introducing a bunch of new ones in this issue, and it's really good fun. And so if you like character stories, but you still love that high fantasy and action and even sci-fi to a degree, this is definitely the comic for you. And I'm not expecting anyone to pledge over their comfort zone. I had a guy pledge like $600, and I was like, what? The highest reward was $500, and he got that obviously, but it was just like, he pledged like $675. I'm like, that is not only an incredibly random number, it didn't like get us to any like specific goal. It was like by the time he pledged it, we were like to 1873. I'm like, why didn't you just pledge the extra $2 and get us to 1875? I'm like, come on. If like the people listening here, my goal I would love to have, and I have not broke this yet, I would love to get 100 backers on Home and to have that fund the whole thing. Because that would mean, 100 people pledging $25, whether it be the Guardians, where you get the 20 comics, or the cosplay rewards. If we could get to that, I'd be the happiest man in the world. Because that means that I know 100 people are reading my comic and enjoying it. And that would be awesome. But hey, if I get 500 people to pledge $5,
Even
score.
better.
Yeah, that's digital. That means I make more money because all I'm doing is sending out digital comics instead of having to mail printed ones. Whatever you are able to do, ladies and gentlemen, I am okay with that. That's all I can ask of you. And if we get funded, because we're on this podcast, I will be indebted to you, Nate Phillips and Brendan Stone. And so
you don't need to be indebted to us. We like helping out the indie comic scene. Genuinely, it's something we love, especially when the people who are a part of these books are genuine people. So quick you will find that there are people in the world they might be creative as shit, but they're using everybody to get what they want. And with the people we've had on our show, as far as I can tell, they're very genuine people. They're willing to go above and beyond just outside of being a part of our show, and you kind of become a part of the Journey into Comics family. And it so happens that you're now part of the JIC family, so it's exciting.
Appreciate it.
So I will quickly say that I'll probably definitely be in that $25 range. That's usually about what I pledge for books. And then you told me the greatest news, which was that I get Guardians, which I've been interested in anyways.
It's seriously insane how much and I did that originally not as a joke, but kind of like as self-promotion, because I'm thinking, well, if they get all the comics via the Kickstarter, then they'll be all caught up for the new ones, and then they'll want to buy the new ones. And then it was just like, everybody's pledging to that. Not everybody, but like a lot of people pledged to that reward in both Home Number 1 and Home Number 2, because it's like you're getting 20 comics for $25.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of like Comixology and certain other places, you can't beat that. So yeah, and that is a reward. And if you want to pledge to that, I'll happily send that to you if we get funded, and maybe if we don't. But
and what Brandon will probably tell you too, I'm a huge comic collector. Like, for Christ's sakes, I started a podcast called Journey into Comics because of my love for comics. If you give me digital copies and I read Guardians, and it's got 16 issues, so it's probably not terrible. It's probably got some really good stuff that I'll like. as soon as I read it, I'm going to contact you and be like, okay, so how much for the physical copies? Because I have to own them. If the story's good, I have to have the book in my hands. I have to feel the paper. There's just a thing.
Yeah.
There's a textural and a smell. Comics have a smell for me. Brandon knows this. I talk about the musty old smell from like when I, go and I look at my Amazing Spider-Man number 13 and I open it up. There's this musty fucking basement stench that just permeates in these books, and you're just like, God, it's nostalgia. I can smell the nostalgia. If that's all I can take away from this. But on the flip side, I got to ask you both. Todd, are you a Walking Dead comic book reader guy, dude?
Comic book? No.
Show though.
My dad watches it. I'm weird, obviously. But I don't do horror, and even in comics, there are scenes that I don't like and everything. With Guardians, even though I do action, I do some very dramatic stuff. I don't go into like blood or gore or anything like that. And I've seen excerpts of Walking Dead, but I don't personally read that. But my dad, I do know enough about the books and the show to at least make conversation. So
okay, well then interject where you can. I'm going to turn this to Brando. Now, Brando, have you read 155 yet?
I sure did.
Okay, I got to know, man. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I mean, we're definitely leading towards the Whisperer War, okay? And Negan seeking these guys out, his interactions therein from the one before, because I read 54 and 55 back to back, so I'm sorry if it bleeds in.
It's okay. I did too.
I just can't believe they killed Rick. I mean, come on. I'm joking, ladies and gentlemen.
But so again, I do apologize if it sort of bleeds over, man, between the two. But all right, so in 155, we had our good friend Aaron. I almost called him Alex. I'm like, no, that's another guy. Have I said that The Walking Dead has so many freaking characters' names that are only said every so often that it's hard to remember their names?
It happens.
But Aaron, unfortunately, met the end of a knife.
Yeah.
From Beta, we have met Beta now. So we have Alpha, Beta, and I just wonder who's going to be next, because
Omega.
Possibly Gamma, then Valkyrian. Anyone? Okay, never mind.
The Beta is this big brute of a guy, and I really liked Negan's interactions with him in the prior issue, but you know what? I'm not really too sure where they're going with this, because Negan acts like he wants to be the follower here, but he's still being a smartass. So I'm not really too sure. I mean, he sort of acts like, he might be willing to help these guys get revenge on Rick. But it's basically saying that he's got an in to make this happen. But at the same time, it's hard to get a read on what exactly he's doing.
I don't know, man. To me, I feel Negan is definitely in a position right now where he's playing the chessboard. He got away from Rick. We already know that one time he got away from Rick and went right back to the cell and sat and said, look, I'm trying to fucking show you that you can trust me. And that didn't work. And Negan went, okay, well, Rick doesn't fucking trust me and he never will. So what do I do now? Back to the drawing board. So when Brandon, not you, but the character Brandon, lets Negan out, and Negan stumbles upon this, the Omega and, the Beta squad of the Whisperers, and then eventually runs into Alpha, you kind of knew if he ever met Alpha, there would be an interesting possible chemistry. But ultimately, I still feel like Negan is playing them at this point, and it would not go outside of the bounds for them to be like, okay, everybody, we're going to start this huge Whisper Wars series that's going to last 6 or 10 or 15 issues or however the fuck long we want it to last. I mean, with it was 11 issues, 12 issues of all-out war. So that was like essentially a year, but then, of course, 6 of those issues were every other once every 2 weeks. So it was compacted. We got a little extra content. It wouldn't surprise me if they're like, hey, we're going to do this Whisper War, and then fucking Negan just guts her and then takes her head back to Rick and goes, look, I did it for you. Now do you trust me? And then it changes the whole dynamic of the story. Or on the flip side, if he does what it seems he's going to do, and he's going to band together to help Alpha take out Rick, Rick has a fuck ton of problems he does not even know are going to hit him. And I think that makes for, again, extraordinarily interesting story. And that's the most important part there. So for 155, man, I thought it was a very solid book. Seeing the cover and knowing the title for 156 before I read 155 kind of fucked me up a little bit. Because now the 156 is called King and Queen. So, and the cover is Alpha and Negan dancing together.
Oh gosh.
So where are they actually going? I don't know, because Kirkman's the genius of throwing curveballs. He can build it up, make you so certain that things are going to go a certain way, and then the last fucking second swerve into oncoming traffic. It's just how he rolls.
Can I just note that, his other series, Invincible, that's definitely how he does that one as well. He's 110 issues into that thing, and he's still throwing curveballs at people, and that's beautiful storytelling, and that's why I think he gets the respect for Walking Dead and Invincibles, because he's just able to build these masterful stories, which is something I aspire to be with all my stuff, and hearing about this, and the different things that are coming for Rick, that's beautiful to me, because it's just that's how much storytelling should be. It should be simple, elegant, but complex when it needs to be.
He does a really good job of weaving good narrative and character building, and then using the pawns to place these certain characters with each other or against each other to create really interesting dynamics. And Kirkman has done that pretty much since the beginning of this book. I unfortunately have not read Invincible, but I would like to.
Well, neither have I, but there was a big stir that was caused by it. And then, when I was immediately taken aback by what I was hearing was in this comic. And then when I heard him describe why he did what he did, I'm like, I'm okay with this. As brutal as it was, as visceral as it was, it was just, I understand it because of the way he described it, and that's the way it is.
Kirkman kind of has this thing where it doesn't matter what medium he's playing in, it's a sandbox to him, and he just goes, okay, I need this piece, and I need this piece, and I need this piece, and I've put those pieces together, I have a really intricate story, and then if I add this piece, then that changes the dynamic for all these stories, and it's almost to me, and I've always wondered if he does this, it's almost to me like he has a giant map, and it's just a bunch of computer paper he fucking taped together, and it's like 1,000 sheets of computer paper. And he drew out and wrote every character name he could possibly think of and attributes of that character. And then he starts piecing the puzzle together on a map. And then the story will come on its own. All you have to do is put the drama between two forces, and the story will come out of that based on the narrative you're trying to tell. And I feel like he's just so far ahead of it that he has to have just planned years and years and years in advance to know what he's going to do, and not just the Walking Dead comic, but in the Walking Dead TV show. I don't know if I mentioned this on air, but I believe that the reason that the comics had the 2-year time jump is so when that time comes in the Walking Dead show, that's 2 years they can tell on the show that they didn't tell in the comics, and allow the comics to go 2 years into the future.
Should be brilliant.
And never catch it up to itself. It never catches up to itself.
And we can all know how much the comics have, and how much the show has diverged from the comics. Even I know that.
They deviate and they weave in back and forth, yes.
It's good, because, if it becomes too close to the comics, then it's just predictable, even for people, who don't read them. You can kind of see where it's going, but with these curveballs, it twists things. Like I know everyone's thinking that, oh crap, who was Grace's husband? Glenn. Everyone thinks that Glenn is going to die at the end of Lucille in the show, because that's how he died in the comic, but we don't know. And in fact, many think that because of how he was built up and almost killed in this show, that he's actually going to get a reprieve from the end of the barbed wire bat. So
And
we
then,
don't know.
And then on the flip side of that, you go, well, maybe they fake killed him so that when they kill him, it's going to mess with you even more. You just
True.
don't know with Kirkman.
don't.
He's so, like I said, he's just batshit crazy, and he knows it. And he just says, okay, I got this plan. And I don't remember the issue. Forgive me, anybody who wants to fact check me in the hindsight of this. In one of the earlier issues of The Walking Dead, I want to say issue like 68 or 72. In the letter hacks, Kirkman very openly says, just wait till I kill Glenn. And you don't even bat a fucking eye at it. Because at the time, you're just like, oh, like he'd kill Glenn. And then it comes to light that he fucking spoiled it. The whole thing was spoiled the whole time, and no one even paid attention to it, because why would you? Why would you even pay attention to that? And that's why now I have to read the letter hacks at the end of every issue. Because you never know what he's going to let slip or not. So, I don't know. As far as The Walking Dead's concerned, I'm really, really, really genuinely happy with where the story's going. But, and I might do this a little bit out of order here, guys, in not really wrapping, because I know we've got a little bit of content left to cover. But to start the wrap, I'm going to switch gears and real quick discuss. Now, Brandon, I don't know if you got to read any of these yet or not, and if you did.
Yeah, some of them. Let me see which ones I read, because I sort of picked and chose which ones, because I read them all today.
Okay,
like sitting here waiting for you guys.
Waiting for us, sure.
Waiting
trust
for
me.
me and my barbecue. It's okay. You can call me out. You can put me on blast. I can take
I
it.
only got to read a few of the rebirths, to be fair, but I'll let you know which ones I did, and which ones I will be reading, so that we can definitely talk about that. So
Sweet. So we'll start. Brando, which ones did you read?
Trying to find the. Oh, here it is. Comics. That's the folder it's in.
yeah.
All right, so I read Batman,
Yes.
Superman,
No.
Flash,
No.
and Wonder Woman.
No.
I did not read Aquaman,
Yes.
Green Arrow, Green
Yes.
Lanterns,
Yes.
or the Teen Titans.
Well, Teen Titans.
That one came out?
No. It's actually Teeny Titans.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I was about to say, wait a minute. I thought Titans was coming out this week. So.
And
No, screw with me, man.
I definitely read Teeny Titans. I didn't review Teeny Titans, but it was essentially, just to quickly brush on Teeny Titans, it was like from the cartoon. Is it Cartoon Network that has Teen Titans right now?
Teen Titans Go. Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
but the Titans they had learned that there were action figures made of their characters, and you had to collect them all. And it was literally just a comic book digging on toy collectors. It was kind of funny. It was a little bit zany and bizarre, and Robin's like, no, I love this one. It's me. It's perfect. You know, and then Raven's like,
Let's go.
why is this cape orange? I don't wear an orange cape. You know, like hilarious shit like that. Like it was definitely fun. But I'm gonna run down the list real quick for me. I have very few points to make on each of these. I'll tell you guys my review. If you read it, give your quick fire review, and then what stars you give it. We'll start with Aquaman. Aquaman book, not terrible. I felt like it tried to make me feel bad that people don't like Aquaman. Like, they were like, even on Earth, they think that Aquaman talks to fucking fish, and he doesn't actually talk to fish, you know. And they're like, really tried to play on your emotions. Like, you should feel bad for not liking fucking Aquaman. And I was like, God, this story is kind of drab. Like, I almost just am gonna just give this thing a 1 star. And then the end of the book happens, and you're introduced to Black Manta. And
Again.
Okay, so truth be told, this is only the second time I've read Aquaman as a whole.
Missed out.
Well, I kind of got into the DC thing late in the game, and
understand.
I'm going back and learning about these universes. I was a huge Marvel guy for a long time, and as I said at the 100th,
understand.
I feel like Marvel, ever since Secret Wars 2, is just in it to take people's money. The content has went down dramatically, and I feel like DC's picking it up, and that's why I thought Rebirth. Right now, they're resetting their universe. Why not read everything I can and review it as best as possible? So I thought that Black Manta looked awesome. He's a badass-looking villain, I guess.
He is.
But he's got the classic Indigo Montoya syndrome. You know, you'll kill my
Go
father,
on.
now prepare to die.
Oh,
you know.
okay, I gotcha. No.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just okay. I have a long story about Aquaman, but I'll condense it in like 10 seconds. I have always been a fan of Aquaman because of the Justice League cartoon. You know, the hook hand, the mullet, everything. That was
Yeah.
awesome. And when I came into comics, Aquaman was dead, and he was actually a big part of the Blackest Night storyline where they brought the dead back to life. And then he got reborn, and when the New 52 happened, I was really wanting an Aquaman comic, and a man by the name of Jeff Johns stepped in and said, I'm making Aquaman. And the New 52 run of Aquaman is one of the best stories. Few exceptions, obviously.
I have it. I haven't got to read it yet.
In fact, this whole issue of Rebirth kind of was almost exactly like the first issue of Aquaman written by Jeff Johns, because in that issue it was about Aquaman, the New 52 issue was about Aquaman in a diner after he'd saved the day, was made fun of repeatedly and accidentally. And then he goes to the restaurant we see him in, and this waitress comes up and she goes, "What do you have?" And he goes, "I'll have the fish and chips." And like, I kid you not. And everyone looks at him and goes, "What?" He goes, "You're Aquaman." "Yeah." "But you're eating fish." "Yeah." "But you talk to fish."
No.
And then this punk blogger comes up to interview him, and he goes, like, what does it feel like to be the biggest joke in the Justice League? And he presses a button, and his trident like grows twice his size on the prong end, and the blogger like shuts up immediately. And I was like, dang straight, you don't say that to Aquaman. But Aquaman's really had this resurgence, and it grew in such fandom in a way that at one point in time, Aquaman was the number 10 comic seller of a month.
Yeah.
Think about that. Aquaman, this guy, getting caught up in the can rings on the ocean, and the superhero in the Super Friends cartoon that constantly gets referred to. The guy who rides seahorses is beating all but 9 comics in the entire universe. So and the Black Manta thing was actually a new addition in the New 52. Because they wanted to make this rivalry even more dark, and so they made it to where Black Manta killed Aquaman's father first, and in revenge, Aquaman killed Black Manta's father, so that they have this blood ritual of death, And then, so when I read this issue, and I found out, about that this was being told from the perspective of Black Manta, I was actually very impressed because, it shows the respect that Black Manta has for Aquaman. You don't hear about this from villains a lot. It's rarely shown, except for maybe like Joker and Lex Luthor at times. But he showed, hey, this guy is tough. I almost feel sympathy for him because he's not respected in the way that I even respect him. And then he goes, but I'm still going to kill a sorry carcass because he killed my dad. And so he's like, I haven't forgotten that, Aquaman. So yeah, I was actually really happy with this issue. I mean, it didn't really advance anything. If anything, it just really reinforced a lot of the major themes that happened in the New 52 Aquaman. But for people like you, Nate, I feel this was a good jumping on point. And because they're going back to that Aquaman Black Manta rivalry, which is very much known, I feel like this is a good start to that comic. So
yeah, I give this one a 3 stars. The story was by Dan Abnett. The pencilers were Scott Eaton and Oscar Jimenez. Mark Morales and Oscar Jimenez again were the inkers, and Gabe L. Tabe was the colorist. 3 stars, I think, is fair. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't the best book from the Rebirths. It was the first book I read, though. I read them in alphabetical order. Just went down the list.
Okay. Next.
Well, hold on. I want to know what you and Brando. Brando, did you read Aquaman?
No.
You did not read Aquaman. No. Okay. So what was your out of 5 stars, Todd? What would you give Aquaman?
I gave it a 4 because the art was actually one thing I didn't like because it went from one style, like the first 5 pages,
to a totally different style,
which was totally better and everything. Now, and for those people who didn't read, New 52, even like the last arc or so, you wouldn't have understood some of the new characters. You wouldn't have known about the Seadrift Station, which was a major plot point in the recent New 52 comics of Aquaman, and so you would miss things, and that did hurt it. And so I can accept yours. 3 out of 5. I would give it a 4 just because I felt like it resonated more with me. But I also read the New 52 Aquaman, so I think that might have bettered my score.
Well, yeah, because you
Could have
had
been a lot. Could have been a lot worse.
yeah, totally. So we'll move on to B is for Batman. To me, I thought Calendar Man is a cool villain. The way they told him this time that he kind of is reborn with the seasons. After winter, he sheds his skin and kind of is literally just amalgamation back into existence. I think that would be really cool for, like, whether it be Gotham or one of the Batman stories to have Calendar Man. I know he's a totally underutilized rogue, definitely in, like, the C to D list area of Batman's rogues.
Agreed.
But you know what? I've always been interested in Calendar Man, ever since I learned about him, and then, like, having him included as an Easter egg, and I want to say it was Arkham City? Yeah, because Arkham City was
he was a literal basement villain.
Yep, a literal. Yep, absolutely. So I don't
Good
know.
luck getting that trophy, by the way.
Yeah. I thought the yellow. I'm gonna call him not Robin, because that's all they said. They didn't really name him. Looked interesting.
Call him the Yellow Duke.
Oh, because Duke. That's genius. We should just call. I'm gonna call him Yellow Duke now. Cool. And then, Alfred had to waste what at one point was a perfectly good avocado, because by the time the couple days rolled around, it was no longer a good avocado. It had soured because the seasons had changed every day. And speaking of that, seasons changing day to day is just normal Indiana weather. So I liked that shout out to Indiana in Batman. Scott Snyder and Tom King did the story. Mikkel Janin, I always fuck his name up. Mikkel Janin did the art, and June Chung did colors. I gave it a 3.5. It wasn't the best Batman story ever. It wasn't the worst Batman story ever. I guess I just have to see where this goes. I think that was kind of the hinge that I didn't give it a higher score, is because I don't know where they're going with this bat. So Brando, you read Batman?
Yeah.
Okay, thoughts?
Pretty much the same. I have nothing else to really add. They were sort of throwing stuff together. I did not read any of the New 52 stuff from DC, so this is my jumping on point to help, to want to read and review this, especially for the podcast. But I was just jumping on point, knowing who Batman is, not knowing who Yellow Duke was. Throwing a Calendar Man was a pretty cool way because, again, really underutilized villain here. I would almost give it pretty much around the same score because, again, with you, it's like, okay, cool little story here. Now what? Amazingly, along with some of these Rebirth stories, some of them tie in directly with what happened in DC Rebirth. Some of them have not yet gotten there.
Bingo. So are you giving it a 3.5 officially?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm just writing them down for average. Okay.
I read it. Honestly, of the DC Rebirth stories I read, this one was the most disappointing. Probably because I read, Scott Snyder's legendary run, undoubtedly legendary run. Seriously, if you guys get the money, buy all the trade paperbacks because they were totally worth it. But
time out. Are you talking about New 52 Batman?
New 52 Batman.
I own every single issue, homie. All first
okay,
prints.
Okay, maybe that was just Britain. I thought you said. Never mind. You said you wouldn't really get into DC Comics and you're using Rebirth, so I thought that meant you hadn't really read it as a whole. But okay.
Well, to quickly touch on that, I will say
Please.
Batman's my number 2 all-time favorite superhero. Spider-Man being number 1.
Gotcha.
So when I started getting back into comics when I got a little bit older, I jumped on, got every different form of the Batman stories that New 52 was telling. So I have all of the Batman run, I have all of Batman and Robin, I have all of Detective Comics, and I have all of Batman the Dark Knight, awesome. Which are all for different reasons great books. Lots of Batman stories. And then I slowly became a fan of the Flash because of the TV show, and then I started doing research and reading old Flash, and I was like, oh my god, I spent so much of my fucking childhood wasting my time on Batman. Flash is so much cooler.
Wasting.
Not really wasting because Batman's amazing, but you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
So New 52 Flash was the last thing I read, and then I started to kind of pick back up, and I wanted to read Aquaman. I want to read the Justice League run that Jeff Johns did.
Oh, that was great
and
too.
a couple others. So yeah, to touch on it, I do have a little bit of the New 52 stuff.
Right, okay, so I read all of the Batman stories too, and so when I got into this one, it just really left me not and not mad, but it was just like I felt it was severely lacking. Now, yes, Calendar Man thing, that was a nice twist. I mean, I agree, he's an underused villain, and using the whole shedding with the seasons thing, that was pretty cool too. I have no idea where this is going. That's the whole point. Is that with Aquaman, at least okay, Black Man is back. It's time to go back to war. Let's do it. And then he's got the the whole I'm still trying to balance the me on land, me underwater. With Batman, even though he kind of like tied up certain aspects of the New 52 stories, he just gotten Wayne Industries back. He had lost it. He got it back now. He's got Duke, who's not Robin. He's trying to train him, but there was no inclination, unlike in DC Rebirth where we see the people who are going to be messing with him. I felt it was lacking to me, so I would give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay, 3 stars. That's pretty good average there. So yeah, no, yeah. To the next one, the next comic. Let me tell you, the next comic is actually the reason I jumped on the hype train for Rebirth, because I read a little ditty. I was like, oh shit, is that for real? And then I started doing a little research, and I said, okay, fine. If I'm gonna read all these books, I'm gonna read all these fucking books. And I've never given this character a chance as far as comics are concerned, so now is the time. So we're moving on to Green Arrow.
Oh, wait. I thought you said... Whoa. I thought you said we're doing this... Oh, wait. Are we doing this in alphabetical order?
Yeah,
If you did, you missed one.
I didn't get to Detective.
Okay, well, can I talk about Detective then?
Sure. Fill us in.
This was my highlight of the Rebirth titles so far. Detective Comics, where it has Batman, Batwoman, Tim Drake Robin back in true Robin gear, Stephanie Brown as Spoiler, has Sandra Kane as Orphan, her new name, and then Basil Marco as Clayface, working together to face this unknown threat that even has Batman worried. And when you have Batman worried, ladies and gentlemen, there's something wrong, in like the good way. What really struck this about me was the character interactions, because Batman with Batwoman, who actually had very little interaction in the New 52, much to the chagrin of fans, they finally got to admit to each other that they're cousins, even though apparently Batwoman knew longer than Batman or something. Didn't really understand that. But they had a fun interaction. Then as they started recruiting everyone, that was great. Clayface had the most beautiful scene. He's in a movie theater, and he's scared everyone out of the theater because he just wanted to watch the movie, of which he was the star. And you could see the emotion in this true face of Clay as he's saying, that was me. I just want to be me for 45 minutes, Batman. Give me that. Give me the rest of the movie and the credits, and then I'll turn myself in. Just let me be me for 45 minutes. And Batman goes, I can do one better. I can actually make you again if you help me. And it's just like,
oh,
okay,
damn.
then. Exactly. And so we don't know who this threat is exactly, but I loved everything about this comic. I'm going to give it 4.5 because there were some odds and ends. And I wish, like in Aquaman, we knew who the villain was, at least in part. So, but this was easily the highlight of Rebirth so far for me.
Nice. That's I don't know about you, Brando, but that little review right there has me interested to hurry up and get back to Detective. It's the one I guess I didn't even realize Detective came out, and it just slipped my mind. Yeah,
it happens.
Yeah. So, am I the only one that read Green Arrow?
I read Green Arrow.
Brando?
Nope.
You read it?
I read it.
I did not read it.
Okay, Todd read it. You didn't. Okay, so me and Todd real quick. Okay, so I'm going to throw my quick Green Arrow thought in here. Yep. Nothing really special about this book. It did sell out. It was the first of the Rebirths to sell out all 100,000 copies. That's
For real?
And that's what made me rush and go buy one.
I did not know that.
It was the first Rebirth book to sell out. It's already on a second printing. And what's weird is, out of all the books, I would not have expected this one to be the one that people were so freaked out over. Underground men from this, they're kind of scary, I guess. They're a little bit creepy looking.
It was actually really creepy, honestly.
The art, though, for this book was absolutely fantastic. Otto Schmidt did just a phenomenal job. There's that splash page with Ollie jumping off that building, and he's like, I am the Green Arrow, I was just like, that's what comics is fucking about, yes. Green Arrow, though, he's not in Star City.
Seattle.
He's in Seattle. I thought that was a little bit bizarre, but I kind of liked it because,
It's a New 52 thing. It was an established thing, but I do know that people who are, Green Arrow TV will find that odd, but this was an established thing. There was a long storyline about why. So it's just one thing. It's just something the fans are sadly going to have to get used to.
You brought up the show, so you brought up this show real quick, so I'll say it. Dinah is not in any way annoying like Laurel from Arrow. But Oliver was really way too quick to trust her in this book.
Okay, I'll agree to that, but you also have to remember that because of the events of DC Rebirth, the solo issue or whatever, the moment they looked at each other, which they had confirmed was like technically only the first or second time they had met, they knew something was there. And it wasn't like the whole love at first sight. It was the Wally West thing of, they started to remember there was something there before, but it was taken from them. So I don't mind that because of that note in the DC Rebirth issue. Now, if that had not gone down and they just said, okay, let's put Arrow or let's put Ollie and Dinah back together, then I would have believed that. But because they even showed that scene in DC Rebirth where they're like in their rooms, just like looking longingly into the night because they realize the other is not there with them, that meant something to me. And so when this happened, and then obviously like that final page where it goes, "It's nice to meet you," finally, you understood. Okay, this is really going back to what we had before. So I didn't really mind that.
Awesome. What would you give it? I gave it a 3.75.
I gave it a 4 solid easily. It wasn't like the most epic thing, but for people who wanted to see a good rebirth, unintended, of Dinah and Ollie together, this was very good. And I got this honestly because it was the rebirth issue and because of Arrow, and I had known about like the separation that they had in New 52. I did not read any of the Green Arrow comics in New 52. For me, it just wasn't a need, even with Arrow being out. I don't read Flash either, but it was just I wanted to try it out. I'm glad I did, and I'm looking forward to next issue and seeing these two together again. So,
agreed. All right, now we're going to go into a hyper speed round.
Do it.
I'm going to throw out these thoughts really fast, and we're just going to bust through here at the end. So I liked Green Lanterns. I thought that it was cool. I connected instantly to Simon and Jessica as the new Lanterns of Earth. I thought that was interesting. Jeff Johns, he just knows what works, and it's obviously his story. I gave it a 4.25. Your rating 4.25.
I like that they're taking this with the quote unquote newer Lanterns. I'm glad they're still focusing on what made Simon and Jessica memorable to fans. Again, both byproducts of the New 52. Looking forward to the Red Dawn and seeing where that goes.
Yeah,
I'm good with a solid 4.
Atrocitus, stoked.
Please,
Okay.
and the cat.
Yeah. So Superman. Brando, did you read Superman?
Yes.
Okay. So I thought I was kind of surprisingly captivated by this story, actually. Death of Superman Clark trying to ensure that New 52 Soups comes back. As Brando mentioned, or Todd, I can't remember which one. I think it was Brando, that the LL thing. That Lana Lang teams with the Death of Superman Soups. One of you said that it's the L's. I couldn't remember who said that though.
I made the LL joke, but
Yeah.
I wasn't referring to this comic because I honestly didn't read it.
But it worked out nicely because Lana Lang is teaming with the Death of Superman. That's hard to say. To go bury the New 52 Clark in Smallville with his family, and this story kind of ends on all hope seeming lost. Like there's just no hope, and I think that's kind of cool because in a book where, or not in a book, but in a story where you've got a guy like Superman, no hope is a huge counterbalance to that character. I gave it a 3.5. Brando?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly where I was thinking, 3.5.
That's weird. Okay, so we'll move.
It was a good character piece.
Absolutely, and I think that's what got me, is that it was a great character piece. The Death of Superman Clark keeps going, no, you don't get it. He'll come back. We always come back. I know, I came back. Do you not remember Doomsday? He fucking murdered me. And look where I am.
Snow always comes back.
Exactly. Thank you for the fucking...
On your way, Lord Commander.
I have not yet watched Last Night, and that's a whole nother show that we'd have to unpack. The Flash. Moving to The Flash. Brando, you read this one.
My personal favorite so far that I've read.
Me too.
Wow.
Speed Force trying to warn Barry of what's to come. Wally's
Well,
they revisit the return of Wally West, which we
I
talked
love
about.
how that just went right
The
into
true
that.
Wally West.
Mm-hmm. I love how that went right into that from the DC Rebirth book, and how we just pick up right there and then continue on even more to go forward with that. I really like the book.
This book was a better Batman book than the Batman book I read.
Yeah, actually.
because Flash and Batman researching and examining the Smiley pen, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. I wrote in my notes, this is the best story of Rebirth so far, drawing a beautiful mystery to the heroes and an obvious epic confrontation for the reader, because we know what's coming.
Yes.
Barry and Bruce have no idea. And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy where it's almost like the first season of The Flash, where the audience knew the swerve, but Barry didn't know the swerve, and it made you excited for when the confrontation was going to happen. I gave this book a 4.75, and I'll stand by that without question.
By all means. I just feel bad for Batman and Flash because it's all a bad joke. Mama, forgive me.
Brando?
I would give it a 4.5.
4.5. Wow, we're like right on the mark there. All of us. Like I rated these on my own time and told you guys kind of after I had read them that I wanted to do this, and then you guys did also have reviews that are similar to mine. Wonder Woman. We'll move on to Wonder Woman. It's the last one in this line. Todd, did you read Wonder Woman?
Finish it off. I did not, but I know what happens, and so I don't think as much as I love the character, I don't know if I'll read it, but that ending.
Well, maybe this can help you determine if you really want to read it. Brandon, I don't know about you, but to me, this book addressed nicely the inconsistent origins and history of Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of what the whole book was founded on. Like, oh, wait, what actually happened again? But wait, didn't this happen, though?
Yeah.
I thought that happened, too. Oh, because it did. And I enjoyed that. But the sad thing is, to me, nothing really sunk in with this book. I was hoping I would enjoy it more, and I didn't as much. But the thing that interested me more than anything, as Todd was saying, the end, how we know now that there are going to be 2 books in one book, alternating stories from the past to the present to the past, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Which is very bold.
It is, and having 2 different teams do the book. You have one team that's writing her in the past. You have one team that's writing her in the present. That's a ballsy move.
It is.
And hopefully it'll work out.
I think for many fans, when the New 52 came out, you could argue that the 3 characters that truly benefited more than anyone else was Batman, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman. That initial arc from Brian Azzarello, where he did redo the origin, she is now a demigod. Maybe. The whole "you have been deceived" thing. That was powerful. And then, the arc he wove was great. But then when he left, it went really inconsistent. And so a lot of people are hoping that with this twist and this true consolidation of the origins of Wonder Woman, it's the hope that we're going to get back to that classic Wonder Woman stories, because Wonder Woman was widely considered the best book in the New 52 for a long time when Brian Azzarello was there. It won numerous awards, Comic of the Year awards. And especially now with the Wonder Woman book coming out, DC's under pressure to make this stick and to make it work so that all this hype just builds up to the Wonder Woman movie. So
couldn't have said it better. And you didn't even read the damn book.
Well, I love the character. I've literally I am writing, it may be published by the time this is I wrote a piece about what I want for the Wonder Woman movie, and I love this character, and I want to see her done right, both in comics and TV and in movies. And so I know what I want to see through Wonder Woman. And so in this comic, even though I only know vaguely what happened, I have hope that this could be what it needs to be special. So
hell yeah. I gave this book a 3.25 though. Like I said, there was nothing in the story itself that tied me to it, and maybe that'll be different once the actual issue 1 comes out. Yep. Keeping in mind that Rebirth #1 is just the mini series that are setting up the new universe, not the start of the new universe, because obviously we've got Titans #1, Flash #1, Batman number 1. We're doing all the number 1s. It's a party.
Okay.
3.25. I don't think that's a terrible review. It ranked higher than Aquaman for me, just based on the news at the end about the multi-story universe. Brando, what about you? What do you give the Wondery Woman?
I gave it a 3.
3, man,
That's fair.
Right on point. Awesome. Okay, well, that was our quick fire review on Rebirth number 1s across the board. Last thing I just want to say is I think it's super awesome that we've got Injustice 2 coming now.
Oh yeah.
We'll need to talk more about that later. You guys could probably talk about that on Game Addicts podcast. Where
Might be best because they keep announcing new characters and likely they'll announce a few more before E3 is over. So it might just be best to save it for then.
Bingo. So if that's going to do it for today,
One more thing.
Go ahead, Brandon.
One more thing.
Look at
I
this.
want to extend an awesome thanks to our friend Ben Krieger.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. We've had him on the show before, of course. He was successfully kickstarted Black Suited Death. Friend of the show, JSC family member, and he actually designed all of our new logos for us that you've seen us kind of rebrand the show after, or at 100. And I just want to extend an awesome thanks. He did not have to do that. That was so gracious of him. And he not only did that, he also acquiesced our requests for a few changes here and there. So that awesome work. I cannot. I love the new logo look. It really works. It really fits with the name, and it gives me a lot of pride. It looks very professional. So
I love it. Just so you know, Journey into Comics just hit 1,250 followers.
Oh, hell
Really?
on a-
Okay, well, I'm expecting all 1,052 followers to pledge to the home Kickstarter so that I can do the rest of the series without even having to do another Kickstarter.
See, we'll just we can put that on our Instagram. That's where we have all of our followers. So I've been trying to build our Instagram brand, if that makes any sense. But
Do it. You'd be surprised how Instagram works.
it really does. Right now, there's an awesome picture of Wes being the taco. But if that's it for this week's episode, which I think it is, first of all,
It is.
Todd, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure to have you.
I had a blast these last 2 hours.
It was great to have you on the 100th and the dynamic that you brought to that episode, and to now have you on 101 as a full-on guest of the show, to be able to understand your journey into comics, to understand how Home is on its way to being kickstarted for issue 3. Make sure to look for that. You'll see it on all the Journey into Comics media, social media stuff. We'll make sure to be plugging that. Follow us on Instagram at Journey into Comics. Follow us on Twitter at JIC Podcast. On YouTube, search Journey into Comics. On Facebook, Journey into Comics Podcast. You can email us questions, comments, complaints, concerns at journeyintocomicspodcast.gmail.com. And if that does it, Brando, do you got anything else, bud?
I think I'm good, man. I want to thank Todd again for coming on, and thank everybody for checking us out on all that other social media stuff. And to if you're into games, stay tuned, because we'll be having that episode coming out by the end of the week on YouTube, and then if it's going to be 102, it'll probably go up next Monday here on the main feed. So
awesome. And also special shout out to MC Lars, who did our intro tag for the show now.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. We've got another one that we'll be using soon. I guess I can spoil that here, but we got one from Rita as well. Or
Yes, you got it. I'm so happy.
Carla Perez as Rita Repulsa, and it's really, really kind of awesome. But if that's going to do it, I'm Nate.
I'm Brando.
I'm Todd.
Thank you for listening to episode 101 of Journey into Comics. Later.